I got something to say. No, wanted to take a few minutes to announce something that we've been working on for past few months. So as all you guys know, I've spent past year and a half, 2 years now working on things in our communities with the uh, with the intent of bridging the gap between our law enforcement and our communities. Um, you know, as a human, I feel extremely compelled to use my platform and my influence in whatever way for the benefit and not just for my sole benefit. So, with that being said, um, last September, I embarked on a journey to find ways to bridge the gap between relationships between the law enforcement and our community. I spent countless hours speaking to community leaders, public officials, members of our law enforcement community, politicians, technology companies, and a number of other groups that had any type of form of hand in this topic. And although these issues spread into communities across our country, I've decided to focus my immediate influence and attention right here in the state of Washington in which I live, in an attempt to create a model for similar efforts across the country. So here in Washington State, I've supported efforts to provide our law enforcement with the proper training and resources required to meet their changing and demanding needs of their job. In doing so, I feel that the community and the law enforcement relationship will greatly benefit from a renewed sense of responsibility and accountability. So today, I want to announce my public and financial support for Initiative 940. This initiative aligns with my goals and seeking solutions to bridge the gap between the communities and the law enforcement. The main components of this initiative are A, to provide up-to-date de-escalation training with the Continuum program for our new and current law enforcement. B, to provide current and up-to-date and a continuum program for our current and future law enforcement in dealing and responding with mental health issues. And C, to require law enforcement to render first aid when applicable. And D, to adopt an objective standard definition of good faith. Now, you guys know I spoke at Olympia last year and directly speaking towards this part of it. As it pertains to Washington state law, there has been some disparity in the understanding of what good faith means. So this initiative would eliminate the confusion of good faith in the regards to use of deadly force. It's been my desire to support efforts to aim at healing the relationship between law enforcement and the community. So I believe this initiative is the step in the right direction. And so, again, today I'm officially announcing my public and financial support for that initiative. And now I'll be open to questions.
What's the financial support?
Financially supporting.
A lot?
I'll let them announce that. Yeah.
You've mentioned in the past that the money is the big deal, that a lot of the training can't be done unless it's funded. Are you getting state funds or police guild funds or any and all of that to match what you're doing?
Yeah, well, that's still to be delegated. There's a lot of bipartisan support for this initiative. It takes into account a number of concerns and issues from both sides of the aisle, and listening to law enforcement and also obviously the community as well. So those funds will be coming from a number of different places, but again, it's got a large bipartisan support. So we're optimistic about it.
Doug, when would this be on the ballot?
I'm not sure yet. Not sure yet.
Where do you think you're at in this whole journey? I mean, it's been a lot of work over the last year. Does it feel like it's coming to an end, that you're halfway through, that it's only a small portion completed?
I think the journey for positive change is never ending. I've always believed that, progress is not a destination, it's a journey. And so for me, I don't know where I am in it. I just know that I feel compelled to use my influence, my platform, in whatever way, shape, or form to effectuate change in a positive way. And so wherever that places me, wherever that puts me, that's where I am.
Hey, Doug, how did did you come upon putting mental health in there? Because most initiatives aren't looking at that. What was kind of the tipping point for you to add that to this initiative?
Well, I didn't add it to this initiative, but it's been something that's been part of the conversation for a long time. So we've had a number of instances or situations that have happened here in the state of Washington that have the use of deadly force, which have also included issues with mental health. And so we thought that, or I thought personally that that was something that was that needed to be included in any initiative that I supported, and this initiative obviously had that included. So I think that that's vitally important as well.
Did you learn any?
How did you see conversations changing over the course of time that you were engaging these different parties?
Well, the longer that we spoke with people, I think the more they became empathetic to the other point of view as well. And I give a lot of credit to the individuals and the organizations that we spoke to. You know, they might have come in with an agenda at first thinking that we were on one side of it, but I thought that we did a great job of showing that we're just trying to learn as much as possible, that we're not trying to pass judgment on anything. We're just trying to be empathetic ourselves. And once we engaged in that way, I felt like the reciprocal of that was also empathy and understanding. And so it's been a very pleasant journey. Obviously, it's had its ups and downs, but the interactions and the conversations that we've had with people have been very empathetic.
How much has your dad, just the conversations you've had with him, how much has that kind of helped frame your viewpoint going into these conversations?
Yeah, they've been a huge influence because obviously my father being a law enforcement officer for 36 years, I understand the difficulties, the dangers that come with his job. I understand the inherent risks. And so, you know, I don't want to take away from that. We never wanted to take away from that. We understood that this was a very serious topic to be addressing. However, it's not necessarily trying to take anything away from what they're doing. You know, this initiative and the initiatives that we've supported in the past have always been about giving our law enforcement more resources, more training, so they can adapt to the dynamic job that they have. The communities are changing. Our society is changing. And sometimes I feel like our law enforcement, the services, the public services, they don't have enough resources to keep up with the changes that we see in our society. And so this initiative, I believe, directly addresses that issue.
I was going to ask if you, in the conversations you had, if you've learned anything the other way. I mean, about, and like you said, your dad. I mean, obviously you've been around it your whole life, but if you learned anything specific about the increased challenge, maybe they have today's that opened your eyes about it from that standpoint.
Yeah, that, you know, there's so many different perspectives, and there's so many different training strategies, techniques. It's all different state to state, from county to county. So there's a lot of information to unravel and to unpack. And so learning just from my father, you know, there's what he grew up in, which was verbal judo, is completely different than what officers his same age grew up in here in the state of Washington or in Colorado or in California. But it's all the same sentiment in terms of trying to make it a safer environment for the law enforcement and for the community that they interact with. And again, that's what this initiative is all about, is furthering that so that the safety and the importance of that is at the forefront. And so what I've learned more so is that you have to expand your thought process. You have to be empathetic because, you know, my father thinks that verbal judo was saving graces for him in some situations. Some individuals might not think that, but there's another technique that they think is beneficial to them. And so taking both of those and being able to collaborate for something that's beneficial for all, you know, that's been the huge part of it, the huge learning curve for me.
Do you see this as an outline of what you would like the NFL to support?
Absolutely, and I think they've done a great job. From my communications with the NFL, with Roger Goodell, you know, they have been willing to offer their resources for us to do more research, to understand more of what's going on a political level, and then also offering their support. Obviously, you know, the joint letter that I wrote with Goodell, you know, and they've continued the conversation. And I know that the NFL is going to continue their support for causes and initiatives that players are passionate about. But I think this initiative, and for me, it's more so focused on the state of Washington, and obviously we'll have internal discussions with the Seahawks organization and what that means moving forward.
Doug, you mentioned how conversations changed kind of along the way with some officers and others. I'm curious what kind of resistance you might have faced along the way with people saying, "Hey, man, you don't tell us how to do our job," or "Hey,
Yeah. I can give you an example. I went to speak at a SWAT banquet not too long ago, and you could tell when they realized that I was going to be their guest speaker, it was a little tense. Because they all had this perception or this thought that I was anti-police or that I was against, what law enforcement is supposed to be about. And obviously these guys being the elite of their field in SWAT, I wanted them to know directly from me, from my voice, from my mouth, that that's not what it's about. And so after I spoke to them and I gave my speech and they understood fully where I was coming from, recognized that my father was also a law enforcement, was also on the SWAT team, that's where they got to see the truth of the matter, and that ultimately it's not about blaming anybody or taking any protection from anybody. Really, the truth of the matter is that we see that there's a divide. We see that there's an opportunity to build that gap, to bridge that gap, to find solutions to bring everybody better together and to enhance the safety. And when I articulated that in front of them, they were very receptive of that. And a lot of the guys came up to me afterwards and they said, I didn't understand before, but now I do. And I appreciate you coming here and speaking and being willing to do so. So the conversation, again, like I said, to Jen's question, it's been, as we've continued to show more empathy has been shown in return.
What made you feel like the initiative process was the right way for you to channel all of this progress for you?
Well, it's the process, right? If you want to get anything done, you have to start somewhere. And I thought that this initiative addresses a lot of the key concerns that both parts of the aisle are talking about. And so, it's already there. It's receiving funding. It's receiving support, bipartisan support at that. So I wanted to start here because I thought this was a great building block for what we're trying to get done here in the state of Washington.
Will the Action Fund be connected to this at all, or is it solely just you?
I'll have more for you on Friday. I'm not supposed to ask that question, Jackie.
You spoke with community leaders as well in this journey. When you talk to community leaders, what's their main kind of gripe from the community perspective in this regard?
Very similar to our own, in that the message is being diluted and confused. A lot of the community leaders and members, they're not saying that they don't want law enforcement or they don't want their law enforcement to be engaged with the community. They want that. They're yearning for that, but they're yearning for that on more of a personal level. They want the law enforcement to be engaged and be interactive with the community so that they can understand the plight of the communities that they serve. And not to say that our law enforcement aren't trying to do that. It's just that sometimes they don't have the resources, the money, the time to do so. And so we've looked at that in an empathetic way as well, and I think the community has done so, and that's their biggest concern, is that they don't want their message to be misconstrued, that they're anti-police either. They want the law enforcement in their communities because obviously the more law enforcement and better relationship within the law enforcement, the healthier the community can be. But they just want that relationship to be one that's actually personal and engaged with, and not one that's what we've currently seen.
Did the law enforcement feel like people were in the community were anti-police?
Well, a lot of the law enforcement that we spoke to, they reiterated the same thing. Is that they want to have a better relationship with the community, that they are doing their supporting efforts to do so. But it also comes down, again, like I said, the training, the resources, the time. And a lot of the officers that we've spoken to, they have done a lot in the communities in terms of working with kids, working with families who aren't necessarily from the United States, and doing an excellent job of trying to build that relationship. It's just that at somewhere along the line, the message of building this relationship got divided, and now is speaking of division and not unity.
SPD is going to get a new police chief. Do you feel it's like this would be a great opportunity to move this forward? And I don't know if you're talking with Kathleen O'Toole, but it looks like this would be a great opportunity to move this with SPD.
Yeah, I mean, obviously our main objective right now is to announce the support of 940 and then also move forward with continuing support. But I do think this is an opportunity to kind of open those channels of communication. You know, obviously, yes, we've spoken to O'Toole and we had great conversations. And yeah, so I don't think that's going to be an issue whatsoever.
You tweeted after the Cincinnati-Pittsburgh game the other day about I mean, was that a hard game to watch at all? And as a player, when you see things like that happen, or?
It was hard to watch just because, you know, I've been in the league for 7 years now, and so I've played with a lot of these guys, know a lot of these guys personally, and so when you see things like that happen, it's more than just the aspect of it's entertainment or it's a football game. You know, these guys have lives; they're human beings, and to see a guy, you know, when the linebacker got hit and you can see his legs weren't moving, you know, that goes in the back of my mind. And then as I've gotten older in the league, more things become a priority, other things become important, and so you start to think about kids and family in the future, and you know, you can't help but feel for that guy. So yeah, it was difficult to watch, but of course that's just the nature of our sport.
Go ahead, Bob.
I was going to say, but we were just talking to Bobby, and he was talking about the targeting rule, and he thinks would be a terrible rule and all that. But a lot of the stuff is, I think, trying to be designed to player safety and things like that. I mean, do you think that the league's caught in a tough spot right now, trying to figure that stuff out of what's best for players versus keeping the game the way it's been? Or
yeah, I mean, we play a violent sport. Like I said in my tweet, you know, it's not a contact sport; it's a violent collision sport, and there's only so many things you can do to mitigate those violent collisions. And to Bobby's point, you know, it is difficult for a defender to go all out and to make a tackle because you can't control the body movements of the guy he's tackling. So I understand the NFL is trying, but, you know, it still remains to be seen what really could benefit the sport itself in terms of safety.
Are bodies just too fast and too strong to avoid?
I don't know. Maybe that might have something to do with it. I'd like to think that, you know, our athletes now are much more athletic, faster, stronger, bigger, whatever it may be, than athletes 20, 30, 40 years ago. And maybe we haven't caught up in terms of rules and technology of equipment yet. That might be a case. But, you know, honestly, I haven't dove that much into it. You know, I got to spend my time playing it, so.
Would you recommend a family member or a child to play football?
I would recommend that. Yeah, I do. I mean, I think sports are vitally important to the health of our society. You know, football has taught me more about life than anything else that I've ever experienced. And so would I suggest to a parent or to a family member to play it? Yes, but I would say going in, you need to know the risks. There are inherent risks that come with it, and be prepared to deal with those. And, you know, if you don't want to deal with it, then just be aware that it comes with it.
Looking quickly to Jacksonville, what challenges does their defense present?
A number of challenges. First and foremost, their front four is phenomenal. Obviously, they lead the league in sacks. So we know we have our hands full with them up front. The linebackers are very smart and athletic. So we know that they're going to be moving around and causing us some issues in the passing game. And their back four, their secondary, very talented, extremely confident. And so, you know, I'm looking forward to that challenge because I know that they're going to bring the best out of us. I'm looking forward to going up against our offensive line going up against their defensive line, because I know that that's where it all starts. And if we can maintain that, I think we have a good shot.
You've seen Jalen Ramsey on film. You probably saw him, A.J. Green body slam him.
Yeah.
Are you expecting him to try to bait you and get in your head and do that?
I don't know. Honestly, when I go into games, it doesn't really matter who I'm playing against. I'm really focused on me. I have to. That's the only way that I know how to do it. So focused on my details and my assignment, and then we'll see what happens. I know he's a very talented player. He's been in some situations, but I think that's just the competitive nature. When you have an extremely competitive guy, he's going to try to find whatever edge he can. And so I tip my hat to him in that regard. But from that standpoint, I got to focus on me and my preparation for this week.
Does a decade of practicing against Sherm prepare you for any opponent that might try to get in your head?
Yeah, Sherm, Brandon Browner, Maxwell. I've had a number of guys who've given me, that test for a number of years. So, yeah, I think I'll be ready. I'll be prepared as I can be.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thanks, guys.